So I just want to thank everyone again for coming to this seminar. This is the third in our Science Communication Through the Arts series that the NOAA Library is hosting. And today we are focusing on science on a sphere, using data visualization and art to engage and inspire. Our speakers today are Hilary Peddicord, who's the education lead for the Science on a Sphere, and Shilpi Gupta, the technical lead for Science on the Sphere. And I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves properly and get us started.
All right. Hello. Thank you, Katie. And thank you for having us. We are very excited to be presenting on this topic. Once again, I'm Hilary, the education lead on the Science on the Sphere project.
And I am Shilpi Gupta. I'm the technical lead as well as a software engineer for the SOS project.
We are affiliates of NOAA Education, working with the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences at the Center for Education Engagement and Evaluation at CU Boulder. So today we're going to be speaking on behalf of our Science on the Sphere team. About half of these folks are based in NOAA Boulder and half in at NOAA in Silver Spring. Hopefully if you're based in Silver Spring, you are aware that you have a Science on the Sphere and that you could bring folks to it or add content to our catalog. Let us know if you need contact information for the Science on the Sphere in Silver Spring. And if you have content to add to our catalog, please contact me or find our email. All right, so our focus today in this presentation will be different interpretations of communicating science through art. For example, we will share about Science on the Sphere and SOS Explore as tools that are innately creative and engaging and used all across the globe in an attempt to communicate NOAA science. Global map data is just the beginning of what we have to offer in spherical content. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can put art on the sphere. Then Shilpi will dig a little deeper into a couple of projects she's worked on with scientists in creating meaningful content and what it means to influence people and call to action. Then I will talk about a National Science Foundation funded education research effort wherein we're using arts-based pedagogical approaches to teach with data. Then we'll finish with some examples of arts storytelling focus, as well as some paper globe cutouts and other fun stuff that we've been inspired by our SOS Users Collaborative Network. So Science on the Sphere it's a fabulous education tool that was invented and developed here at NOAA Boulder and has been installed in 200 places around the globe. Those range from science museums, aquariums, planetariums, sometimes even lucky public or private schools. And all of these sites have been invited to be part of our SOS Users Collaborative Network. With all the active SOS sites, we share a catalog of over 500 data visualizations and educational movies, including 45 near real-time, constantly updating data sets that are mostly from our NOAA satellite partners. In addition to Science on the Sphere and this big museum tool, we have multiple virtual spherical flat screen versions of SOS that we call SOS Explore. SOS Explore visualizes a subset of the SOS catalog and can be freely installed and used on a number of different platforms, including mobile devices like Chromebooks and Windows computers. It also comes with the capability to display high-resolution data on multiple screens, for example, in a public exhibit setting like the photo in the bottom right there. This is the tool that I use to inspire kids of all ages in the classroom to see their world in a fascinating and interconnected way. You can see me presenting with my Ms. Frizzle dress on there in the middle to some second grade students. and I was sharing about ocean temperatures. We are looking at seasons and how the land versus the ocean changed throughout the seasons. Now, not only does SOS Explorer allow just about anyone to carry it in their pocket, but it also can do things that Science on a Sphere cannot do. We are not bound to the surface of a physical sphere in SOS Explorer, so we're able to add information like the ones you can see here, some engaging interactive and 3D content. So for example, on the top left there, that's the International Space Station. We're able to show the current and expected path of the International Space Station. So you can watch that as it moves around the globe. We also have 6 other 3D modeled satellites and their paths. As well, in the top right, we show all the different satellites, lots of GPS, well, not all of them, but many of them. Certainly all the NOAA satellites, as well as other weather satellites and some GPS. So that's really fun to look at to see, how are we doing this science at NOAA, or a lot of us, through satellite observations. On the bottom left there, we show what an aurora might look like from space. So that's obviously a more artistic version of data. And then in the bottom right there, we're also able to sample data by using an analysis tool. There's only a few number of data sets that we're able to do this with, but this particular one is really neat because it's a stratospheric ozone real-time data set. So you can show what ozone concentration is doing over the course of the last year. Now remember, you can do this too by installing SOS Explorer on your machine, on your computer, and hopefully Shilpi has put that link in the chat there for you. So SOS was invented to show global mapped data. But in the 20 years that we've been in operation, we've seen just about everything on the sphere. And we like to keep reminding our network to think outside the box when developing content for the sphere. So here's a few examples. One, the big picture in the middle is a piece commissioned by the NOAA Education Environmental Literacy Program to show what does a resilient community look like. So for example, here, I'm not sure you can actually see my cursor, but there's a boat in the foreground and the caption says, "Students map resilient assets." Then there is a structure built on stilts that says, "Houses adapted to severe storms, flooding, and rising sea levels." Then we see some sandbags here up on the hill, and it says flood preparedness. We see there is a science center where the youth are convening a climate summit. On the top of the hill, the university researchers study resilience solutions. The school underneath that, it says K-12 schools, where teachers and students create a rain garden. So you could see a rain garden in front of the school. And then these folks here in the foreground on the right, they're community members engaging in citizen science. So that's a really neat picture that we can show on Science on a Sphere with captions or without captions. Another one that I wanted to show here is another example of sort of an artistic version of data is here in the middle that I just started this movie. It's one of the NASA data sets. We do get data sets from anyone, not just NOAA. And it shows 30 years of sea level rise in a different way. When you show global sea level rise on a map, you can't really see a whole lot. But if you show it in this way, it definitely sheds new light on it. I forgot to mention the top left there. This is similar to the blanket knitting project. We've added the climate stripes globally for a few different countries on our catalog. If you aren't familiar with the stripes, they are anomaly temperature data. So blue is colder than average, red is warmer, and each stripe is a year since temperature records began in the 1880s. And then the last one I wanted to show is a video that was created by the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Macon, Georgia. And that video is showing the patterns of the jewel beetle. So as you can see, the sky is the limit with content. We also know that kids and adults alike especially enjoy having some ownership of what's on the big ball. One fun activity that we've worked on both internally and when we work outside at other people's spheres with a bunch of students is a really fun project where students can plot their own maps on paper, and then we wrap it around the sphere. And of course, there are things you can learn from this about spheres or great circles or flat versus spherical maps, but it's also just fun. And you can see here the snow globe art contest one of our network members did was just kind of a neat holiday thing. Now I'm going to turn it over to Shilpi to dig in pretty deep with some really cool content, and then we'll come back.
Thanks, Hilary. So I wanted to get us started by playing a short 5-minute film called Holocene's Little Boxes that was made in 2019 by director Lars Jans, Early Morning Opera, in collaboration with Pablo N. Molina and Nightlight Labs. This film was a project that was a collaboration between Eco Arts Connections and NOAA SOS and was made possible through a National Endowment for the Arts grant. This film was made specifically for Science on a Sphere. So Katie, if you could please go ahead and start that, and we will have a brief interactive exercise right after this.
Humans mostly live in little boxes. And we mostly make decisions that impact today, or next month, or the next few years, but usually no longer than that. We struggle to make decisions with the long term in mind. And we mostly make decisions that impact our immediate habitats, our homes, our towns, or at most, our nations. We struggle to consider the consequences of our actions beyond our immediate vicinity. And that used to be basically okay, because the Earth was just so big. It could absorb whatever we threw at it. But now there are so many of us, and so many little boxes to heat, to keep cool, to furnish, to make larger and larger. Our appetites, our everyday behaviors, all add up to a huge impact on our environment. Our planet has always gone through natural cycles. In human terms, these changes have taken a very long time. But now, something is different. We are changing the biosphere in a few decades as much as the whole system changed over tens of thousands of years. Even though we feel separated in our many little boxes, we're part of one continuous system. We don't live alone in little boxes. We live together on a big globe. The impact we're having has massive consequences all across the world, not only for tomorrow, but for the next few centuries. We've never really tried to make a decision with the whole planet or the seemingly distant future in mind. So what can we do? They say people change slowly. That was supposed to be the case for the Earth as well. If the Earth is changing faster than ever before, maybe we should too.
Okay, so we would love to hear your gut reaction to what you just watched. So in the chat, if you could please share your feelings, observations, curiosities, questions, feedback, really anything about what you just saw. And we'll just take 30 or 45 seconds to do that. And I'll read some of them out as they come in. Recoil, depressing, impactful, eye-opening. I love this. It made me uncomfortable in a way that most videos about climate change don't. The rapidly changing timeline was very jarring. Artistic. Anxious. I think that the rooms were good at showing how we think. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for your participation. I really appreciate it. If we move on to the next slide. And I just want to read one more. Very amazed by the presentation of the movie, but was taken aback by the content. It was very jarring. So just to provide some context for this film, the film was based on the original Holocene's live performance and was adapted for Science on a Sphere. As the performers are carrying out everyday behaviors, are submerged in water, their demeanor invites us to reflect on how humans often respond to information and change. So how we continue to act normally in the face of what is occurring so clearly and quickly around us. It might inspire us to reflect on how we can take a step out of our habits and what we know, our daily rhythms within our little boxes, and consider the interconnectedness and how our personal decisions affect a global scale. Okay, next. Two of my favorite questions from the original Holocenes are, how can we feel climate change in our gut? Can we socially evolve as quickly as we have transformed our Earth? Next. So I'm going to pose a few more questions as I continue to present, and I just want to make a little disclaimer that I am not a social scientist, but I'm sharing little things of interest that I've picked up along the way. So why do so many people know about climate change, but so few are doing anything about it? Next. So perhaps it has something to do with the Cartesian split. This idea refers to a philosophical concept that was introduced by René Descartes in the 17th century. And it's a dualistic idea that says the mind and the body are separate and distinct entities. It emphasizes the importance of the mind as a source of knowledge, which of course emphasizes rationalization. And this philosophy has influenced Western ways of thinking, and especially the idea of compartmentalization. So on the right-hand side, we have the mind or the brain, and things associated with that are cognition, facts, logic, graphs, and statistics. And as a reminder of cognition, that word means the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. On the left-hand side, we have the body or the heart, and that includes things like affect, feelings, beliefs, images, and stories. And as a reminder, affect is simply emotion or desire, especially as influencing behavior or action. Next. So what are some of the barriers to sustainable action? Next. Social science suggests that to foster effective decision-making and action, good communication must include cognition and affect, or intellect and emotions, working together rather than separately or alone, and that it must consider the values, attitudes, and beliefs of the audiences it is meant to reach. We now know that the information deficit model, which says if people knew more, they would act more, we know that that model for science communication is no longer valid. So, since prehistoric times, the arts have not only documented and entertained, but they've also inspired, communicated, and educated to move people emotionally and physically to do things they might not otherwise have the courage or interest to do. And similarly, today, the arts can be a powerful ally when working collaboratively with science. So how has art been used to influence behavior? I just wanted to go through a few examples as reminders. So next. First, art and religion. Art's been used to express religious beliefs, promote religion, and influence culture, and it serves as a connection between humanity and the divine. Then we have art and advertising. The iconic Got Milk advertising campaign changed the marketing landscape. It infiltrated pop culture and became a staple in American households. And it's a testament to how the power of simplicity and relatability in effectively conveying a message to consumers. And then next we have art and edutainment. Edutainment is, of course, a mashup between education and entertainment. The TV series Sesame Street has influenced early childhood education, emotional management, as well as diversity. And then we have art and politics. This incredible book by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle led to the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act. The book was about the meatpacking industry in early 20th century Chicago. And then finally, we have art and conservation. Western landscape paintings and photography were displayed in the halls of Congress and played a crucial role in the passage of laws to help protect certain areas, for example, like Yosemite. So now we move to kind of reeling us back to NOAA Science on a Sphere. Next. In 2010, we had a summative evaluation at 16 SOS sites that investigated the nature and range of impacts that the sphere has on audiences. The study revealed that outcomes tend to be more concrete, cognitive, and process-oriented outcomes. More effective outcomes, affective outcomes like sacredness of the earth and thoughts of the earth as the home planet fell towards the bottom of the list of outcomes that visitors experienced. Now, while that in and of itself is not a bad thing to have affect at the bottom of the list, we started to wonder, well, how can we buoy the idea of affect to work in concert with science and cognition in order to see if, will that help people remember the SOS experience and films that they just watched? Will it inspire them towards conservation and sustainable actions? Next. So we decided to apply for a grant with the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences, where we wanted to research the hypothesis on SOS, that Earth system science and data visualizations conveyed through artistic images, metaphor, and storytelling can be more effective for inspiring social engagement and behavior change than purely informational science and data visualizations alone. So this was a collaboration between NOAA SOS, myself, and Marta Kern, who's the director and founder of an amazing organization called Eco Arts Connections in Boulder that brings artists and sciences together for conservation. We commissioned 2 nationally known artists to work in consultation with scientists to create 2 6-minute arts expressed and science-informed films for SOS. This process included 6 group meetings with both the artists and a diverse advisory committee of scientists. There were 7 NOAA and CIRES scientists in the fields listed in the slide. We held an experiment with the general public at Fisk Planetarium where the films were premiered on SOS, and we had audience surveys. And then we held a panel discussion several weeks later. Next, or rather several months later. So just briefly, I wanted to go over the experiment because I think it was interesting from the audience's perspective. On the right-hand side, the 2 images on the right, we had one group watch science-based presentations by typical NOAA docents at our facility in Boulder. And then we had another group watch only the artistic presentations. The docent-led presentations matched the topic of the artist presentations. After watching each presentation, each group filled out on-site surveys and then online surveys several weeks later for each film. And in the middle image, you can see we held a panel at Fisk Planetarium with 2 of the scientists, 2 of the artists. And we just had this nice panel discussion. And we did evaluate, formal evaluations that included graphs and all the survey results, but I'm not going to touch on that too much because I feel like we were just scratching the surface, and I would love to go more in depth with bigger evaluations. But I'm happy to send the information to anyone who's interested. Next. The first film was called Meander, and it was made by composer and new media artist Michael Theodore in collaboration with Hunter Ewan. Next. And the film was inspired by Boulder, Colorado's 100-year flood and the books and lectures of geomorphologist Ellen Wohl. It explores how we can understand the health of a river by looking at its shape and considers the impact of human activity on riparian ecosystems, where riparian refers to wetlands that are adjacent to rivers. This film was all graphics, and it had a narration that corresponded pretty clearly and in an obvious way to the graphics. So a few audience reactions from the survey. These graphics coupled with the narrative have stuck with me. They were visually striking and helps me to retain the concept. Another person said, I would have liked to see videos of floods or flood damage, less graphics and more real-world pictures and videos, people being affected and interviewed. And finally, another person said, I really enjoyed this presentation. It covered an important topic in a way that was approachable, informative, and engaging without being heavy-handed or trying to make me feel bad for being a member of our modern society. Next. And then for the second film, Soon It Would Be Too Hot, this was made by filmmaker and visual artist Jeannie Leota. And I wanted to show these images because it was super cool to see over these 6 meetings, the artists would share their feedback with the full group. And it was neat to see what their inspirations were. So for Jeannie, she was reading a sci-fi novel called The Drowned World. She was drawing, playing around with text and painting. She found an image of Arctic ice from 1979 and made a painting of that. And one of the things that she said that really stuck with me is, everyone, I'm paraphrasing, but everyone is tired of hearing the gong of the ice is melting, the ice is melting, the ice is melting, and seeing melting polar ice data sets on the news. She felt like people were starting to tune out of that message we just became so familiar with. Next. Her film comes from the title of the film comes from J.G. Ballard's 1962 climate fiction novel, The Drowned World, which vividly describes a dystopic future Earth. The film utilizes original imagery, sound, and the most current satellite imagery of Greenland, as well as CO2 data visualizations to consider the ongoing state of melting Arctic ice due to the warming of air and oceans fundamentally caused by our carbon emissions. And then some of the audience reactions to Soon, so next, would be Soon It Would Be Too Hot. One person said this presentation was more abstract, and I found it harder to understand and relate to. Its impact was more emotional and less persuasive factually. It was a little interesting as abstract art, but I didn't get the connection to global climate change. And then our evaluator wrote, the most common comment from the group that Watch Soon was about the emotional response to the sounds and the music. Unnerving, trippy, alarmist, loud, edginess, scared, and emotional. So I think this brings up a few interesting questions. One is, are pieces that are more abstract like that, are they better suited to be in a contemporary art museum environment where people might be able to relate to it more? Or is it good to have these kinds of pieces in traditional science museums to help people think expansively and from different perspectives? It also brings up the note that fear-based approaches, this is from social science, fear-based approaches don't often inspire action. And from the survey results, people seem to have a little bit of a fear response. Okay, next. And then I just wanted to share some interesting project reflections. So next, these are from the artists. This is one of my favorite ones. The level of observation of the scientists has been incredible. It's the best critique I've gotten so far while at the university. Another one said, every time I came away with a scientist's perspective and was held to correctness, the final product reflects advice taken along the way. Next. And from the scientists, I always left the meetings very pleased that I had participated, fully energized about the project, and eager to get back to my lab and do more science. Another person said, I never imagined communication about climate change without words or plots, and massively expanded what I think of as science communication. It was important to develop a relationship with the group over time, setting up your allies. It takes time to feel comfortable with each other before feedback can become direct. And that was very important. By the end of it, everyone felt like they were friends and super comfortable to share any kind of information with the other. Art is so great at making people embrace the complexities and nuances. It takes it away from science of fourth grade where you got an answer right or wrong. And then some from the PIs. When you hold space for people to share and be open, they're willing to share ideas and emotions that they may not otherwise think to do or be willing to share in a professional setting. And in fact, one of the scientists even said midway through our group meetings, we would never be talking about this kind of thing in our regular science-based meetings. And from my perspective, it was really incredible to observe, we have a tendency to pigeonhole people into, okay, they're an artist, they think this way, they're a scientist, they think this way. But it ended up with the scientists saying some of the most beautiful, poetic, emotional commentary, and the artists really honing in on the technical aspects of the science. Next. And then briefly, just some lessons learned. So there's communication. How to best communicate the project objectives to a diverse group of people. Because yes, artists and scientists sometimes do think differently, and you have to kind of shift your communication based on who you're talking to sometimes. How do you generate a synergistic dialogue between disparate fields? We found that really having a lot of open space for people just to popcorn in their ideas worked really well and made it a very organic process versus saying, okay, artists, you speak first, and now scientists, you speak. And then how to give feedback to artists without micromanaging the creative process, because the artists definitely did not want to look at this as we are trying to create something for marketing approach. So we had to be delicate and make sure we were honoring their process. Next. Emergence. So this was interesting. The first couple of meetings with the full group, the PIs asked the scientists, or actually we asked everybody to come up with a menu of what they thought were important Earth system science topics that the artists should consider. Despite the fact that everyone knew about the goals of the project, like inspiring sustainable action, most scientists did not include a human connection component when they presented their topics. And then artists had a challenge with being asked to select from a menu of topics. They wanted the piece to emerge out of a collaborative discussion. Next. Tech challenges. So this was shared by both artists. I would have liked to have more access to engineers to do the data visualizations. It felt like there was a big learning curve for them to try to figure out how to deal with the data. So how do you go from supercomputers with tons of data that you don't have access to being able to work simply on a laptop to create these presentations? So having a data technician inbuilt to help with these kinds of collaborations is something we'll explore next time. Next. And then pairing. So This project ended up with the artists having their topics kind of emerge organically through these conversations as well as their own experiences. But another model both sides, artists and scientists, wanted to explore in the future is having a direct pairing from the start of artists and scientists coupled with the larger advisory board so that there could just be a tighter, like one-on-one interactions between the artists and scientists. And then finally, some personal reflections. So what if high-profile climate change discussions actively and openly included artists, scientists, politicians, and? Like, how would that change the landscape of policy? Would it make it more equitable, nuanced, and expansive? And a recommendation to share this kind of process and the products of these collaborations to policymakers, just as a different way of thinking of science and data and action. And then, what is the responsibility of the individual, personal engagement, versus the government, political action? Should we be inspiring civic engagement to be part of some of these collaborative stories? And I know some people, when they watch these films, some of the comments we got were, well, I'm doing everything I can. I'm riding my bike. I'm not idling my car. I'm doing this and that. But really, it's the responsibility of a greater entity. So I thought it brought up some interesting questions. And then finally, why is it that art can make the sciences more palpable? We know that the general public is highly variable, but emotion is a great commonality in the human experience. How to tap into this with integrity and depth, and what are the emotional and relatable aspects of climate change? Next. And then finally, if you're interested in seeing any of these films, you can go to sos.noaa.gov/catalog/datasets. And on the top right-hand side, there will be a search bar where you can search for Holocene, Swoon, and Meander. And thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Hilary.
Thank you, Shilpi. That was great. I haven't heard that information put in that way, so I really loved it. Great. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about another project, and then we'll kind of go into the lighter kind of quick stuff. Because Shilpi and I are both NOAA affiliates working for the University of Colorado in a cooperative institute called CIRES, we're afforded the opportunity to participate in these academic and research activities. The most recent of these is Building Insights Through Observation, which is a project funded by the National Science Foundation, where I work currently with folks from the Nurture Nature Center, J. Sickler Consulting, and the EDC Oceans of Data Institute. And we're researching arts-based methods in data education. And specifically, this is Building Insights Through Observation is a framework that combines arts-based approaches with science content and data to build observation and critical thinking skills in middle school science students. By slowing down, considering design tools and techniques, and discussing ideas and interpretations, BIO supports student-driven sense-making data and earth science content. One of the arts-based approaches is called visual thinking strategies. In the activity, students or a group of any kind can answer questions like, what's going on here? And what do you see that makes you say that? The technique encourages facilitators to only listen and paraphrase back what is heard and not lead or reward right answers. Our model asks teachers to choose an artwork and a data set that they can use in this observation activity. So Dave Curry, an 8th grade science teacher from Newtown, Pennsylvania, taught plate tectonics and used this art piece along with this data set in his group observations. We've heard from teachers that using art in science classrooms is surprising to students and increases classroom engagement. We also know that when right or wrong answer is not determined, students stay curious instead of checking out. So we are just kind of going through our information, our research now, and so I'll have a little bit more to report on later. Also used in this unit that we worked with middle school science teachers on is this design tools guide, which breaks down some of the methods of visualizing data. And with the design tools guide as a class, they choose how they might want to represent survey data. And this, by the way, is a unit on hurricanes, not plate tectonics. The first symbol on the top of the strip of paper is in response to question 1. Have you or your parents ever experienced impacts from a hurricane? Yes or no? So you can see different symbols that the students were able to come up with using their design tools guide for answers to these 5 survey questions. Hanging up like this, they allow students to be able to look at the data set as a whole and make statements about perhaps their class and what their class's experience with hurricanes is. Later in the unit, students re-represented data on SOS maps in their own way, using the design tools guide as well. Here are a few examples of the student work using their own design choices and data representation skills to recreate SOS datasets on tracing paper. The top left is cropland, the bottom left is population density, and on the right are reservoir locations. This unit was all about water and food, and we're just putting together, like I said, the results of this research telling us whether these methods move the needle for students' understanding of data. After getting these units, and of course I didn't explain the whole unit, twice a year. And we're also looking at the teacher's comfort in teaching with data, and also which approaches were most effective. So feel free to contact me if you want to learn more about this. It's a very exciting program. So back to Science on a Sphere and our sort of day jobs over here at Science on a Sphere. We have been trying to move the needle for people in understanding data, but also for our educators and docents at the Science on a Sphere locations around the world, because we're the headquarters of Science on a Sphere, so we interface with all the educators, or many of the educators in the sites that we were talking about earlier. So we've started adding some storytelling to what we call live programs in our catalog. Now, for example, Human Climate Change 101, Human Activities, Emissions, Consequences, Solutions, and Different Futures. The second one is Celestial Dance, the 2023 and 2024 solar eclipse, where we go into different types of information about eclipses, what are they, different types of data sets. We even have a poetry example in there that students can use. As well, we worked really hard on a live program called the Pandemic and Air Quality story. So we essentially looked at the short amount of time when everyone was in lockdown and tried to figure out whether the air quality changed and what we thought that meant. To increase understanding of flat versus spherical data, we have also created a few hands-on things. We now have a number of these paper globe cutouts on our website that teachers can print out and do with their students. So we've actually heard from a lot of teachers that these are fun, and we do pass these out at conferences and such. So feel free to go on, print some off next time you are interfacing with teachers. And just to our last, I believe our last 2 slides, I wanted to bring up just a couple of other really fun things. We have some amazing museums as part of our SOS Collaborative Users Network. And of course, they do fun things like yoga under the sphere or weddings and such. On the left, the collaboration between the Nurture Nature Center and Easton Yoga, which is in Easton, Pennsylvania. This yoga class is designed to help you think about the health of the planet and the health of your body. So that's really fun. In the middle, and actually the rest of the 3 pictures there, is a really neat project that some researchers here at CU Boulder did in collaboration with the University of California, Berkeley, Lawrence Hall of Science. The goal of the project was to explore, prototype, design, implement, and evaluate a system for interacting directly with large, high-resolution spherical displays. Now, eventually, this became a program that I used to teach 8th grade science students how to make art on Science on a Sphere and how to learn about great circles, for example, or geometry of a sphere. And they were using very simple turtle, like a turtle programming language. So they were learning a little bit of coding as well as these things about spherical surfaces. This was a really fun project. And finally, we have had a museum do theater on the sphere. There was a sci-fi theater piece that was done for the Fringe Festival in Nova Scotia. And finally, again, at the Nurture Nature Center, which is partially an art museum in Pennsylvania, one that I work with on that Building Insights Through Observation project. One of their artists came up with some data sets. So data sets from Science on a Sphere that are like yoga balls that you can sit on. So we like to bring those with us from time to time. So we'd love to answer any questions as you may have them. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Shilpi and Hilary. This is awesome. So I'm just going to remind everyone that the Q&A panel should be off to your right next to where you found the chat. So please put any questions you have there. And I will invite our speakers to come back on camera. I see that they are there. And I'm going to start off with a question that I have. If folks are not in Boulder to see the Science on the Sphere there, where else can they view a physical Science on a Sphere?
Yeah, so I actually have the Sphere locations page brought up here, so I'm going to post that right into the audience chat. It should give you a running list of the Science on a Spheres around the world. 100 of them are in the US, 100 of them are outside the US. Some of them, of course, have been taken down because they're no longer active. We have been working on our project for 20 years, so we don't expect that every museum is going to keep it up forever. But hopefully that will give you a sense of where to see it. Yeah, and Thomas just said, come to Salt Lake City. I think I know who that is. And also, hopefully you'll find one. If you work for NOAA, there are a number of NOAA sites that have it too.
Awesome. And Thomas does have a question. Are data sets available for purchase, or how do we make them?
Yeah, that is a good question. You'll have to check with me, Thomas. I know you know my email. Yeah, I think they are available for purchase from the artist, and we need to talk to them about being able to make them outside of that.
Awesome.
I also see a question, where can I find the Climate 101 story? So hopefully that
I just put a link in the chat.
Thank you.
Awesome. You answered that question right away. So our next one that we had just come in is from Kevin. If we have an idea for an SOS product, what's the right way to jumpstart this process?
Yeah, love to know more about what you mean by that. So feel free to email me. I'm sort of the one currently who's putting data sets into the catalog, myself, as well as Juan Pablo from the Silver Spring office. And so we are the ones who kind of work on that. So I'd love to hear your ideas.
And I did put a link to the content creation guidelines in the chat in case you want some of the technical specifications.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm checking to see if we have any more pending questions, and I am not seeing them yet. So we'll give everyone, 30 seconds to type up their question. But Shilpi, Hilary, is there anything you didn't bring up that you wanted to highlight about Science of the Sphere, like the coolest thing about it, or anything you want to share?
Just get it on your phone, you can show maybe what you do at NOAA or what you do for your job. You might be able to just show it on your phone to your friends, to your family. So SOS Explore is available for free on a phone or any kind of mobile device. I think that's a really fun way to dig in a little bit to our project.
Great, thanks, Hilary. I'm not seeing any more questions. Kevin has an email headed your way, so this is exciting. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We do have time left in our hour, but I think everyone would enjoy some of that time back. So I'm just going to thank again Hilary and Shilpi for this amazing presentation and being part of our Science Communication Through the Arts series. The library has been really blown away by the seminars that we've hosted through this series in connection with our temperature blanket project. And I want to invite everyone to the last one. We'll be hosting one in December 18th. And please be on the lookout for that notification. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I am seeing one last question, so I want to make sure we do answer that because we do have time. So Ariana is asking, what software is used to generate the data visualizations?
So for the Big Sphere SOS, we use the OpenGL graphics. It's a graphics library, and it's programmed using the C++ language predominantly. And then for the mobile device, the gaming engine called Unity is used.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing in the tech specs there. Okay, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Oops, muted myself. Please have a safe, wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Happy fall. Happy first day of autumn soon.
Thanks for having us.